Alrighty, hello everyone. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with us today. We are going to give folks a minute or two to get logged in here, and then we will start the webinar shortly. Hey, it looks like people have started filtering in a little slowly, but we're going to go ahead and get started with the webinar. So thank you again for joining us today. We're very excited to be here. My name is Lily Moloch, and I am the marketing coordinator for the Nature Conservancy in New Jersey. Today, I'll be facilitating this webinar, but before we dive in, I just wanted to quickly touch up on some housekeeping items. Next slide, please. So we have enabled captions for this webinar. To access them, look for the closed caption button on your Zoom toolbar. You should see a button with two C's on it. If you click on that, you'll be able to turn your captions on or off. During the webinar, we will have the Q&A feature active. So please, if any questions come to you during the webinar, you can feel free to put them in the Q&A box. We'll have time at the end of the presentation for a Q&A session with the presenters, and we'll do our best to address all of your questions. And lastly, we will be recording this webinar. Sometime either at the end of this week or later next week, you will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the webinar recording and then any other relevant resources that may come up during the presentation. So now I would like to introduce you to our presenters. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be hearing from Erika Iouriev and Damon, the Nature Conservancy staff who oversee the beach nesting bird project at South Cape May Meadows Preserve. Erika joined the Nature Conservancy as a Cape May stewardship assistant in March of 2022. She is now the preserve steward and accessibility coordinator, performing land management tasks, educating the public, and working to improve accessibility and inclusion at our Southern New Jersey flagship preserves. Damon has been with the Nature Conservancy since 2000, managing approximately 20,000 acres for the New Jersey chapter, as well as overseeing an annual contract with PSE&G for management of their osprey program. Land management experience includes forest restoration, rare species management of New Jersey plants and animals, trail and public access design, working with landowners, mapping, hunting programs, teaching conservation and science, and running educational programs. Damon has extensive knowledge of New Jersey flora and fauna. He holds a BS from Rowan University and an MA from Montclair State University. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Damon to go ahead and get started on today's presentation. One minute there, Damon. It looks like you are on mute.
Of course I am.
There you go.
Hello, thank you for that, Lily, and welcome everyone. We'll start right away here. This is a pretty cool map of the state of New Jersey, and you can see that we have a lot of places for beach nesting birds to nest. So you would think, looking at this, like, oh, there's no issues going on, everything's perfect. Not quite so, and you'll see as we go through this program, it's pretty tough for these birds to manage on their own on our coastline with various development and 100 other things going against them. But we do have a lot of places in this state where there is potential for these beach nesting birds. I hope you can read some of that. We're going to be talking about the very bottom of the state where we are at our South Cape May Meadows Preserve. So the Atlantic Flyway, you've probably heard of this. This is essentially an area, there's a few of them, as you can see on the map there. We're going to be the one on the right in the blue. Where New Jersey is, the birds kind of funnel right to Cape May. If you picture sort of a kind of an hourglass in the south of New Jersey, and the larger part of the top of the hourglass above New Jersey, and kind of in the middle of the hourglass is where a lot of birds get pinched because of topography, and it's right where we are. So we're a very important part of the Atlantic Flyway. And if you spend any time in Cape May, especially at our preserve, during the proper seasons, spring and fall, I mean, sometimes there's birds just dripping off the trees. It's very important for these birds to have habitat as they come through. Our preserve is perfect for that. Some even breed as they migrate through, but lots of them just need rest. They need a place to rest, need a place to feed. And the beach nesting birds, of course, the ones we're going to be talking about, actually nesting on our beach during this time, summertime mainly. Next.
So this is an aerial view of the South Cape May Meadows Preserve, which was protected by the Nature Conservancy in 1982. The preserve is around 200 acres and hosts diverse habitats such as freshwater ponds and wetlands, maritime forest, and 1 mile of protected beach. This beach is the final destination for 3 species of beach nesting birds returning from their wintering grounds. These are piping plovers, least terns, and American oystercatchers. Beach nesting birds are some of New Jersey's most at-risk species due to habitat loss, disturbance from increased beach recreation, and predation. The habitat they prefer to nest on is the same habitat beachgoers enjoy: flat oceanfront beaches between the high tide line and the dunes. This older image shows a heavily vegetated beach, which isn't suitable for beach nesting birds, and we will talk a little bit more about what kind of habitat they prefer. The piping plover is a small bird, and breeding adults have sand-colored backs with white bellies, an orange bill with a black tip, broken collar, a nice unibrow, as you can see, and orange legs. You're likely to hear their high-low call before you see them feeding on marine invertebrates like worms and crustaceans in the intertidal zone. The Atlantic coast population of piping plovers is federally listed as threatened along its breeding range, and in New Jersey, the species is listed as endangered. The perfect beach for nesting piping plovers has sparse vegetation with shell fragments that help camouflage them and their nests. Too much vegetation, like in the earlier image, provides cover for predators, and the birds don't feel safe nesting there. Male plovers arrive at New Jersey beaches between late March and mid-April to establish territories and create nests, which are called scrapes, and they're really just small depressions in the sand. To those of us used to birds building nests high in trees, this doesn't seem like the best idea, but the sand-colored speckled eggs and chicks are so well camouflaged that they virtually disappear in the sand. From April to May, plovers lay 3 to 4 eggs, which both parents help to incubate, and the incubation period is about 4 weeks. Once hatched, chicks look like cotton balls on toothpicks. They are very precocious and are up and about just a few hours after hatching, following their parents and pecking for food. Unfortunately, South Cape May Meadows hasn't had a nesting pair of plovers since 2013, and we have not had any fledges since 2011. And we believe the decrease in plover nesting numbers is a result of the thick vegetation that grew up on the beach, which made our site a poor breeding location. And over time, as you can see, fewer and fewer birds came to nest at our preserve. This bird species exhibits site fidelity, which means they typically come back to nest at the same site year after year. However, they do visit possible new nesting sites, and in fact, we've had plovers visit the beach often, including just last year, we had 2 plovers. If we continue to provide suitable habitat and safe nesting grounds, eventually they will nest on our beach once again. Least terns are small, loud, energetic birds that are state endangered and not federally listed. They have gray backs and white bellies, yellowish bills, and black caps. They are colonial, so their large numbers, activity, and noise level make their arrival hard to miss. They hunt by hovering over water and diving to catch small fish. Threats to their population include predation and flooding during the breeding season. They are also very sensitive to disturbance, and adults will often work together to scare away predators by dive bombing and defecating on them, which is effective, at least on humans, but takes a lot of energy. In late April to early May, terns return to coastal nesting areas in New Jersey. Courtship and colony establishment begins around the first week of May. As part of courtship displays, males often offer food to female terns in a silly posture with wings spread open and their head moving from side to side. They too nest in shallow scrapes, but these are made by both the male and female. From mid to late June, the female lays 2 to 3 sand-colored eggs, which are incubated for about 3 weeks by both parents. Less precocious than piping plovers, these tern chicks do not leave the scrape for the first couple days of their life. Soon after, though, the young can be seen running around in search of their parents for food. The adults continue to feed the young for about 8 weeks after they fledge. Least tern populations on our beach have steadily been increasing since we began taking measures to protect the beach nesting birds in 2019. Damon will be speaking about that a little bit later. But as you can see, the numbers have been increasing and we've had really good fledge rates as well. The final bird, and in my opinion, the most entertaining, is the American oyster catcher, which is a large black and white bird with an unmistakable orange bill. It is listed as a species of special concern in New Jersey, which means that they are particularly vulnerable and could easily become endangered or threatened, like the other birds that nest in the same habitat. Like piping plovers, they also feed on marine invertebrates in the tidal zone. New Jersey is the northernmost state in oyster catcher wintering range, so some stay the winter while others return from their wintering grounds in March. We've actually already seen a couple on our beach this year. They breed at coastal beaches or back bay salt marshes, although they overwinter in large groups. Once breeding season begins, between early April and mid-August, they become very territorial, often loudly chasing away intruders. They lay 2 to 4 eggs, also in a scrape, and once again, both parents incubate for a period between 3 to 4 weeks. Chicks stay in the nest for the first few days, and usually one parent will forage for food while the other stays with the chicks. Eventually, though, the chicks start following their parents around to feed in the intertidal zone, and though they can fly at about 35 days, they are still dependent on parents for food for about 2 months. The number of pairs we have at our beach is pretty consistent, but you can see that it wasn't until the last few years that we have had successful fledges, which has been very exciting to watch and share with visitors. Hopefully the success continues. Damon.
Yeah, so we're going on to, so you see the birds we have now, and these are the same birds that go up and down the state. There are other ones that other sites may have that we don't, but those are the 3 we have. So if you look at nest failures for piping plovers, this is just, there's charts for all of these birds, but this one we'll look at so you can have some idea of what's happening. So that big circle on the left is the totality of the nest failures. So if you were to pick out that depredation, which just means, taken out by something is taking it out. That's almost 70%. Means that 70% of all plovers are getting predated. Something is happening to them that is not good. And that little circle to the right, almost a third is mammals, and that's everything you can think of: cats, rats, coons, foxes, all of those things. They all love little birds, of course. Undetermined is just you go out and maybe the chicks are gone. You don't know what happened. Maybe the eggs are smashed up. You don't know what happened. That's a huge portion too, because you're not there 24 hours a day watching these things. Unfortunately, we can't do that. And believe it or not, other avian like blackback gulls and crows, they will take out chicks and or eggs. You start adding this up and you realize how difficult it is to keep these birds safe throughout their life cycle. And a tiny little bit of ghost crab used to be a bigger problem on our beach. Used to be a really big problem, but not so much anymore. So yeah, it's just a kind of an awful thing to look at, but it does give you an idea of what's going on. So what are we going to do about it? So our beach was completely covered in vegetation by the time I started managing it. And so we we decided after a while thinking about this, because this is not a new problem. And there needs to be some new solutions because the same stuff has been happening for a very long time. It's just difficult to keep all of these predators away. How do you do it? There's a million different methods. All of them have their downfalls. And clearly, if they were 100% effective or really effective, we might not have these problems in that chart you just saw. So what we decided to try was just kind of forget about the predators, but instead just keep them out of the bird habitat, just literally physically keep them out. So we instituted this program. And by the way, non-lethal predator management, I want to point that out because there are lethal methods, which we would never use. But as you can see, I'll go through the little thing here. This is only a 5-foot fence. This was the first year I did it, just in case you're wondering. That is not an 8-foot man back there and a 7-foot woman, just throwing it out there. So a 6-foot fence we used. And 5 feet a fox can jump over, I found out. So we had to go to 6. And so we put up this fence, and where that gentleman is raking there is also a skirt, about 2 feet, 2.5 feet. So if you're, the classic predator, and most can dig, you will not be able to dig under this. And if you try to climb, the fence kind of wallows back and forth and you fall off. To this day, I don't think we've ever had anything actually dig through that skirt or get over the fence. So that is a in-your-face method that we tried. Seemingly simple, not easy to put up, and that whole management part of it is something Erika and I look forward to every year, and then taking it down afterwards. But yeah, that's a direct measurement to keep them out, and these are huge. If you go out on our beach this summer, you'll see this fence the size of a football field. It's just massive because we want them to land inside it, clearly. And how do we get them to land in there? Because the beach is a mile long. Well, we use decoys. We hand make these in our shop and then paint them. Not that hard to do, just time consuming. And we put out, I don't know, 50 or 60 of these. And we have a call box, solar powered, that can run basically forever. And it has their calls, the birds we want. It has their calls, it draws them in. The birds fly over, they hear their calls, they see all these birds already nesting, which of course are our decoys. And so they descend on our beach. And with any luck, they hang around and stay and nest and breed and fledge. We also use a mammal deterrent spray, which we just, like once a week or so, just spray around the bottom of the fence. Just another deterrent. And crow effigies was an interesting one. So you can get these off Amazon. They look exactly like American crows, but they're made of plastic or some other synthetic thing. So we hang them upside down on the fence. I think 2, because we have two different spots. And every few weeks, if you move them, they work. So crows, part of the corvid family, extremely intelligent birds. Go on YouTube if you want to see some smart birds and look up corvids. They approached these dead crows with extreme curiosity, and they knew something was wrong, but they couldn't quite figure it out. So for the first few years, they stayed away. We didn't have any predation from crows. They literally would stay away from our birds. So that was kind of cool. Last year was the first year I saw them just sitting right next to it. So I think that unfortunately they figured it out. So we'll have to move on with that strategy. But so that is the bulk of what we're trying to do out there now. Here are the locations since we started in 2019. 2019 was smaller, and then we got more and more ambitious, and eventually realizing this is too much work. And at the time now, the beach does not look like that. We're not putting fencing in vegetation. The beach is completely clear of vegetation, and it only takes a year or two to get scatter grasses back up, which they like anyways. So we're sticking with this. If you look at the green boxes, the rectangles, that's kind of where we have enough resources where we can handle it optimally. Any more and it gets just too much, too difficult, and any less, and there's a real high chance that the birds will not nest inside the fence because our beach goes more to the right and to the left that you can't really see there. So that's where our current fence sits. And here you can see a closer view of the bottom. We weave this skirt into that fence so there's no holes for something to squirrel through there. Yep. Here's the decoys. Get various volunteers. If you know somebody that's a carpenter or know a school group that would like to get involved with this, there is no such thing as too many decoys. So shoot us a communication if you want to get involved with that. We would love that. It's a great thing for kids or school group to do. You can paint them, and so yeah, that's what we do. That's the beginning stages of them, and there's one that's complete up top there. Here we are placing them out with the terns. They're gregarious. They're kind of always in a group. So when we place them out, we stick all different directions. And believe it or not, these things, you might be able to tell they're decoys right there, but you would be surprised if you are just walking around outside our fence and putting your binoculars on. You go, oh, look at all those terns. And they're just our decoys. It's happened to many birders out there. And we even struggle with it. Like 200 terns will land within our pile of decoys. And we're like, oh my gosh, you get them all mixed up. But they kind of blend in, as you can see. But yeah, that's pretty fun to do. Here's the beginning of a call box. So what we have to have this thing do is literally play all summer. And there's an additional technique. I guess I could just bring it up now. Yeah, there's the inside. It has an amp, it has a battery, a solar panel, little MP3 player, and it just plays and plays and plays and plays. Now, we have a timer on it, so it doesn't play at night. I don't think these birds make lots of noises at night, so it wouldn't make any sense to draw the predators at night, which most of them are, to that spot with the call box. So it cuts off at nighttime, and then just comes on in the morning and plays all day. And it really works. It's really great for birders and that come by in January and use eBird and say, hey, there's plovers in January. That's a wonderful thing. Ask me how much I hear about that. But here's there it is when it's in all its glory. We cover it with sand and shell, and it kind of just blends in there. Nowadays, we put it on top of a dune. You'll see why I don't no longer stick it on the beach itself. Coming up, but okay, so just go back to that box for just a second. So a new thing that started a couple years ago was if you play this call box all year, 12 months out of the year, you can possibly deter predators. So think about that one. Why would it make sense to play this when it's not nesting season? What in the world, how is that going to do anything? Well, most of the predators around here are tuned into these bird calls and they know when they're around. So if you quote fake news, these predators all year in the wild, predators can't keep going to a food source and not getting a reward. It just doesn't work. You would starve and not reproduce and not move on. So if predators keep coming to these calls in this area and never getting a reward, 6-7 months out of the year, perhaps they will start not coming in the summer when they hear the actual bird calls. That's the theory behind it anyways. And it's anecdotal, but I see less tracks of predators since we started to do that. I don't know if it's working, but it's free for us to do. It annoys the birders. I'm a birder too, so I'm just joking there. But yeah, it's kind of a fake news thing that I'm hoping it's working. I think it might be. So the two kind of things that we have not been able to completely control. So, we've dealt with the birds, check, the mammals, check, and all this is 99%. Nothing's 100%, but we really have success with those two. But then we have storms and flooding is now coming up on the beach. Historically, not so much. Occasional huge crazy storm come by, makes history books. Not like now. Now, the new moon tide will come up on the beach. It's like, what? And these are, where a bird's nest. And yeah, we have them in the fall, but never in the summer. But now some of these are happening in the summertime. You have 200 terns nesting out on the beach. Nor'easter comes, or just anymore, it's just a high tide and some wind. And all of a sudden, places are flooding, including our beach. and then the eggs roll around and probably die. Hopefully there's no chicks. It's just a bad thing. Nothing likes that much water, and that's our preserve you're looking at. I mean, inside that nest should be birds, so it's pretty nuts. So one possible solution, it's a very difficult one to figure out, is the Army Corps, as you might or might not be aware of, they have a contract to basically go up and down the coast of New Jersey and help with beach replenishment. And you know, beach sand is becoming like gold. It's just a really, really important commodity because shore towns are flooding out and so forth. Well, so is our beach. Our beach is lucky enough to be accreting sand. That just means that we don't lose as much as we gain. We seem to be gaining sand. One of the few beaches it does. The Army Corps, knowing this, well, you know, they can use some of our sand to help above us and below us. It's just called backpassing. You move the sand around. It does lower our front a little bit. So it was a project. It was an experiment they did, and our beach got a lot of water last time. And we kind of knew it would happen. We weren't sure how much would happen, but it was pretty bad. So when this season came around, like right now, and they wanted to backpass again, we had a new plan. So we were able to backpass the sand off our beach, which is kind of our barrier to the sea, right? But instead of just doing that, we created 3 islands that are about 2.5 feet tall, much taller, and the slope doesn't work. So when the water does come in our beach, and I'm not saying if, it will, the birds that are nesting on these islands, in theory, the water will go around them. You know, that's the hope. And it's kind of a neat project. We've never done anything like this. We certainly couldn't. It requires some big, giant, crazy machines that you've probably seen, 10-foot wheels on them and stuff. So that's the elevated island project. It just got finished last week. It's covered in shell, and it's really a pilot. We have no idea. First storm, we're gonna take it all out. Don't know. Hopefully not. And we have these cool birds nesting. You know, hopefully no water at all, of course. But it gives them a shot. You know, instead of just when the water comes in, if they're there, they're done. This way, if it's 2 feet or 2.5 feet or less water, it should just go around them. You know, assuming we can get them to land on the island, which I think we can. So this be an experiment for this year. Pretty cool one. The other one issue is public dog walking after, you know, business hours. So we have employees down there during the summer, different stewardship assistants and opportunities for young people to have experience in the conservation field, but they go home at 5. And you know, in summertime, they get dark till 9, and we have 1 mile of absolutely beautiful beach. So I get it. You want to walk your dog, even though there's loads of signs that say you shouldn't do that, you can't do that, and fines if you get caught, all of that. You know, if someone, we don't want people walking dogs, period. But if someone was walking down by the tide line with a short leash, even though it's not something we want, that's certainly not nearly as bad as just letting them run wild, which happens all the time. They just let the dogs run wild. And even though the birds might be in the fence, as you remember Erika talking about, these least terns will get up en masse. You'll get 100 of them to get up because everything in the world, every animal in the world sees a dog as a predator. So they will get up en masse, waste copious amounts of energy trying to just deal with this dog. And then they go back down, and the dog comes over again. They do this 5, 6 times, and they're exhausted. You know, they might not be able to feed their chicks. So it has real ramifications. So we're going to try to have more volunteers present, locals out there on the beach after, you know, business hours. See if we can, see if we can get a handle on that. It's a shame to do all this work and just have a couple dogs ruin a 300 number colony of terns. So those are the new strategies we're working on. So just a picture, you're wondering what the flooding would really look like. That's one of the call boxes that you saw earlier. To your left is our protective dune, 24 feet high. To the right, if you went far enough, the Atlantic Ocean. End to end, 3 feet deep, 1 mile of water. It's amazing and terrifying to see. And it took my call box and just floated it up to the back and clearly filled it with salt water. And that was the end of that one. So now we just kind of keep it up on the dune a little higher out of the water. Yeah, these are the machines I was talking about. If you go back far enough, 2004, 2007, after a really, really terrible storm called the Halloween storm. About a decade after that storm, everyone finally got themselves together. State of New Jersey, Nature Conservancy, and the Army Corps, and did a 3-year restoration. Absolutely colossal. Made what is currently our humongous, natural dune berm system between us and the Atlantic Ocean. Our South Cape Meadows Preserve is fresh water. The ocean is obviously salty, so that is a really good barrier we have there. And they basically redid our whole site. It was huge, huge, huge project, millions of dollars, big deal. And that's when they first restored our beach back to a normal. I mean, can you imagine at that storm, the ocean was just flowing into our freshwater preserve, like tides just coming in and out. It's crazy to think of. So every 4 years, they come to look at it and address it. Normally we don't need sand, but now they're seeing the benefit of getting some of ours, moving it around. And it does, when they do their work, it does remove the vegetation, which is, not easy to do ourselves. It requires lengthy permits and lots of time. But their work does remove the veg. It only takes, like I said, a couple of years, and you got some veg back, because you want a little bit of grass on there. And we may this year try these little, just take 2 pieces of plywood and stick them together on the end, and you make a tiny little house. And if you stick a few of them out there, we're going to see if the terns will nest in them, because they're out in the direct sun. They do blend in, but still you have hawks and other things, and it'd be nice to have little houses for them, so we could try that too. Here was the project I just discussed. Everything in red, they kind of just pulled to the right. And if you look all the way to the right, you see that cove there. See how cut in it is? If you do nothing, that just keeps getting more and more and more and more cut. And it becomes so you can't sunbathe, start flooding parts of the city. Partly due to that jetty you see on the bottom right, capturing all the sand. So they pulled our sand over to there, and they made our sand islands. Let's just give you the satellite view of what was going on there. Here are the locations of the islands, same beach. So we made them this way. If a storm did come in, I keep saying if, maybe I'll just keep saying if, and it hits these islands, if you make just a straight wall, it has nowhere to go but just flat against it. So we made dividers, kind of where the trails are, between these islands. So when water does come in, it has a place to flow around. And I'm very interested to see what happens this season with that. But there they are. It's about the correct size. Well, that's it. I'm going to open it up to questions. Hope you learned something there, and I hope you have some questions as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Damon and Erika. It looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat so far, and I'll just remind our audience, if you do have questions, feel free to keep putting them in the Q&A feature. We will have plenty of time to get to answer them. So Damon, this seems like it's a question for you. Did Hurricane Sandy or other weather-related events affect the plover reproduction rate?
I would say yes. I would say it had a negative effect, but perhaps had the guess you could call it positive. What happens historically, the beaches on the coast, let's just get rid of some of the houses in your mind for a little bit. These storms would come and they would rake across the beach. It would remove vegetation. It would open up, they would create sand islands where there wasn't sand islands. They would remove sand islands. So you'd have this kind of fresh habitat every year. And plovers and the birds got kind of used to that, just habitat being created and cleaned and all that. But that doesn't really happen quite like that anymore. We have houses in the way. Beaches are different shapes. It's completely changed the landscape. So when that happened, I believe some areas were created as well, but clearly lots got lost. I don't have numbers in front of me, but my guess is it was detrimental. But I think there was also small, accessible areas that were created. Hope that helps.
Awesome, thank you. Let's see here. We have another question about ghost crabs. How
Mm.
were you able to mitigate the ghost crab predation?
Yeah, $1 million question there. So we had loads of methods we tried. When there was probably every 5 feet a hole. Ghost crabs, in case you don't know, they dig in the sand in the beach and they go down very far. I remember digging down about 6 feet and the holes just kept going. So they sit down in there, and what they do is they crawl out during the day. They're beautiful crabs. They're just same color as the sand and extremely fast. Extremely fast. They just zip, 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 zip all around. And we had them, they would sit next to their hole or just a couple feet from it, and the plover chick would go down to feed, and it would just grab the chick and drag it in the hole. You'd be like horrified, of course. All the stuff you're doing in the crabs. So we tried lots of different methods, much to no avail, though. They're just, so far down in a hole. There's millions of them. What are you going to do? And it turns out that having a restoration or two and completely removing, I don't know, 200,000 cubic yards of sand and shuffling it around, that's what got rid of ours. We still have them, but nothing near. And like we just had the Army Corps move our sand around again. They can't deal with that much disturbance. So although I really like them, they're super cool crustacean. I'm happy they're not in the millions like they were.
Awesome, thank you. You're not off the hook yet, Damon. We have one more question for you. Okay, so Damon mentioned that there would never be lethal methods for predator control. I just want to hear a bit more about that decision. My question comes from the Massachusetts, Rhode Island region, where there have been some U.S. Fish and Wildlife investment in lethal control in the past.
Yeah, I say that because we have found a method that doesn't require it. We no longer, um, sometimes it may require it, right? If you have no other recourse. Let's say that this amazing fence system doesn't work and you have birds that are winking out or another species that's winking out. And it's challenging, is it? Because you're killing something. And that's another animal, right? That you care about. It's a very challenging situation. I don't like to get in those situations, which is why I thought long and hard about this method. Having seen other, lethal methods you know, not have long-term success anyways where we were. So this was one way around it. It is challenging, isn't it? Because in a place like Cape May and some of these other places, maybe Massachusetts, we've created these truncated habitats. I mean, these habitats are surrounded by people, houses, cats, dogs, rats, all these things that these birds are not used to, and we've kind of causing it, aren't we? And the foxes and the coyotes, they need space too, but they don't have it, and they hardly have any food. So you got this really hard situation going on that if you look back far enough, we caused. So it's like crap. What do we do about it? So if this method keeps working, we are going to stick with it. We just simply keep the predators out of the area. So it's working so far. I hope that answers your question.
Awesome, thank you. This one seems like a good one for Erika. It looks like we have a three-part question here, so stay with me. How early in the season do you put out the tern decoys? Do they stay in the colony all season? And have people messing with the fencing?
So we put out the decoys around the same time that we put out the fencing, which is late March. Hopefully we're done by early April. We put out the decoys in cute little arrangements, and then we turn on the call box and have the call box going. Let's see, what was the second question? Other than making decoys, talking to dog owners. I'm
Oh no,
sorry.
it was sorry. It was have you ever experienced preserve visitors kind of messing with the fencing or the decoys, I suppose?
Yeah, we actually haven't. We've been very lucky. The only issue I've seen is sometimes people don't respect the symbolic fencing that we put up. So we put up the 6-foot fencing to keep out the predators. But we also, about 25 feet from that fencing, we put up symbolic fencing, which is just a post and a rope to just signify to people that they shouldn't come closer than that, to give the birds some space. So that's really the only thing that I've seen people kind of not listen to. If somebody wants to get a good view of a chick or get a nice photo, sometimes they will crawl under that symbolic fencing. And obviously, dogs that are not on a leash also do not respect symbolic fencing. So that is something we can't control.
Awesome, thank you. Kind of on the same topic there, have you calculated the man hours that go into this work, such as, like putting up the fencing, making the decoys, things like that? How many seasonal and full-time staff work on this project?
Is that you? Oh, me? Okay.
Either one.
Yeah.
Eric and I, of course, and it takes us, assuming things go okay, it takes us 3 or 4 days, maybe more, just ourselves. When we get volunteers, we have 2 or 3 volunteer days. I'm talking about just the fencing. And by the way, we've found we can leave the back fence up. So that, quarter mile of fence we no longer have to raise or take down. So we're slowly refining the system as we go along. So in the seasonals, 6 month, normally 2 6-month seasonals every day at the Meadows or 5 minutes away at the Garrett Family Preserve. But a lot of time at the Meadows. You have to be diligent. I mean, if you're not out on that beach and it's in the middle of summer, there's somebody doing something they shouldn't be doing. So it's like you have to patrol constantly. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But at the same time, these seasonals are getting experience. They're getting something for the resume. They're protecting these birds as well. So it's a win-win there. But if we had to add up all of our time, Erika and I'm afraid to do that. It's quite a bit, as you can imagine, because this is not an easy system. I mean, it's getting easier. We're figuring it out. We're refining it, and we're hoping it moves on to other areas. I think the state might try it this year on a smaller scale, just to see if it works there. Because I don't know if we mentioned this, but the past 2 years we've had more least terns fledge on our beach than anywhere in the state of New Jersey. Our numbers just keep going up because the birds aren't dying. Aside from the flooding. Whereas other places, nobody else has a fence. They have regular measures and they're just laying out in the open. I'm not saying this works everywhere, but I look forward to seeing this method used in another spot. And maybe we can refine it. So I wish we could just leave the fence up. That would be great. But it's days and days of time for us too.
And just to add on, the reason that we can't leave most of the fence up is because it gets beat up so much during winter storms and things like that. So while the back portion of the fence is far enough away from the water's edge that it doesn't get buried, the front and sometimes the sides will get buried in sand or just knocked over by strong winds.
And I know that we mentioned, when we put the fence up, did we let the audience know what time of year it comes down? We might want to just give them that information as well. May be curious.
Yeah, usually by the time we take it down, it's fall and all of the birds have fledged and started moving on. So we're not disturbing them at all during their fall migration.
All right, let's see here. Have you ever had issues with entrapment of wildlife in the fencing? How would you keep that from happening? And that's for either one of you to take, so feel free to fight for it.
Well, not that I'm aware of. Now, the size of our fence is 2 inches by 4 inches. So it's just big enough for a least tern chick that is doing well and getting to the point of fledging can just squeeze through. Any smaller and they're not getting out or in. Any bigger and there's smaller mammals and predators that can get in. But like people's dogs and other things, there's no top on this fence. Keep that in mind. No bird's going to be, any bird that has wings can just fly in and out. Well, I can't think of any other thing that's been trapped inside there. Can you, Erika? No.
No.
I mean, you have to go over it. You can't get under it. You can't go through it. You have to somehow get over it to get in there. unless we missed a spot that got broken up or something, but we check it every day. It's a lot of work to do to keep these birds alive. I get it. It certainly is. But what else do you want to do? Just watch them die every year? You know, it's terrible. So we'll do what we have to do.
Thank you. And while we're on the topic of predators, are crows the only avian predators in these colonies, or have you seen, any herons, gulls, raptors, anything like that?
Yeah, definitely owls have been a problem. I haven't really seen them predating, but we've seen owl feathers in the enclosure. I know that peregrine falcons can be a problem too, and other raptors probably. Damon, anything else?
Yeah, there's blackback gulls will fly in there. They're the largest gull. Absolutely humongous. Or if you think of a standard seagull, it's twice that, if not more. They will fly in and gobble up these birds, eggs, chicks, all of it. But yeah, so the top is open. You're right, anything can go in there. So that's tough too, you know. Fortunately, that's not like there's 100 avian predators every day, or we'd have to somehow figure that out. And I'm glad we don't have to go down that road. But yeah, they're there.
Okay, and it looks like we have a couple of questions here about volunteer opportunities. So one is, other than making decoys or talking to dog owners, how can volunteers help with this project? And then the second volunteer-related question we have here, have we scheduled any volunteer days for this spring to help put the fence up? If so, who should people contact if they're interested in volunteering?
They can reach out to either of us. I don't know if you want to put our email addresses somewhere where people can find them. We don't have specific days scheduled yet, but it would be the third and fourth week in March, I would say. And in terms of what else can volunteers do other than making the decoys and helping us put up the fence, I find it really nice just having supportive people on our beach. People that appreciate what we do and can explain to visitors not only our rules, but also why what we're doing is important. And even if all you're doing is pointing out, how cute a chick is, you're letting people know that these are animals, these are important creatures, and they can really add to your life. So I feel like volunteers just being present and sharing their experiences with visitors is really helpful.
Yeah, we had something called a plover patrol many years ago. A little badge, and it does make a huge difference if you go to a site and it's staffed, even if it's a volunteer. It goes a really long way, and we just can't be there all the time. So, and 99% of your interactions are going to be positive. There's always a knucklehead in the crowd, right? But that's few and far between. Most people either, if they're doing, they don't know, or if you tell them about it, they get interested in it. So it's not like we're asking you to go out and put on your sheriff hat and start taking control of people. It's not that at all. It's basically education, and most people are really nice. So, and you're standing out on a beautiful beach and in summertime, so it's not the worst thing you could be doing for sure.
Awesome, thank you. Looks like we have another storm question, Damon. What would happen if a huge storm is coming during the nesting season? Would you try to remove the fencing before the storm arrives?
During the nesting season, no, because I still need that there to keep predators out. I basically just don't sleep that night. There's not a lot you can do with these islands. At least there'll be some peace knowing, if it's just a regular high tide storm, it's likely the birds are going to be okay because they're going to be up on our islands, assuming our attraction methods work and we get them up there. But yeah, when these storms come, the past 4 years, they've brought a foot or two of sand with them. And once that fence gets 2 feet under the sand, it cannot be removed without ripping apart. And then 1 year later, it's falling apart. So I get your point. Just get it out of there before the storm hits it. But it's also, a quarter of a mile It's not easy to just take down. Someday we'll have it figured out where we just stand these things up and walk away, and they'll be able to take them up and down quickly. But as it stands, we have to unroll them, stand them up, connect them, all this kind of stuff. But whoever made that question, if you can keep thinking about it and send me what you come up with, I'd be glad to entertain anything at this point.
All right, so it looks like we don't have any more questions in the chat unless any of our audience members want to put your final questions in the Q&A feature. I'll give you a minute here to decide. Damon, Erika, do you have any closing takeaways that you would love our audience to know before we wrap things up here?
I just suggest you come down this summer or late spring and just see it for yourself. Listening to us is one thing, but seeing it, you'll be like, oh, yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about. And you should hear our call box, and maybe if you're lucky and you got binoculars, you'll find our decoys as well. And if you come during the summer, you might see hundreds of birds on top of that. So I suggest you come in, check it out. There's one nearby called the Garrett Family Preserve. It's 5 minutes away. It's not a coastal preserve, but it's super cool. It's got lots of neat features. A lot of art features now. We're expanding in that vein. So yeah, a couple cool preserves near each other. You should have our information. There's other, smaller volunteer things we need help with as well throughout the year. We don't have like a massive volunteer program because it requires its own coordinator. But we never turn people down, and could always use your help, whether it's just eyes out on the beach, eyes on the trail. That's just as valuable as trimming a bush or any other thing. Having people out there is real important to us. So feel free to contact us for that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. We will go ahead and give everyone 7 minutes back of their day. Thank you again for this awesome presentation. I am very eager to see what this nesting season brings for the birds at South Cape May Meadows. And for everyone who tuned in today, thank you so much for joining us. We will be sending a follow-up email in the next couple of days where we will have a link for this recording and then links to the resources that we put in the chat. So you're not going to miss out on anything. Thank you all again and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye,
See you
everyone.
out there.